So if you'll notice, we're going to record today. Yesterday I recorded yesterday's lecture, and the video was excellent with no sound. So we're hoping we're going to get sound today. If not, this will just be another exercise in looking pretty. Today we're going to go into theory finally. We're going to talk about something called hedonism. If you remember right, last week we talked about the box, bounded by rules. And we talked about how the rules need a couple of principles by which we can begin to develop our theories. So if you would please, without looking in your books, someone tell me what one of the two principles were that we talked about. You have a motive, an action, and a consequence. Anybody? Quiz is Thursday.
Human behavior, you mean?
It's all about human behavior, but we need two principles. Say that again.
Teleology.
Oh, teleology, that was right. Teleology is two words: ology, the study of, and telos, which is ends or purposes or consequences. So teleology focuses on the consequences of an action. If the action leads to the desired consequence, we're going to call it a good action. And there's an upside to all those theories. We're all teleologists, but once in a while our teleological reasons for doing things aren't necessarily producing what we'll learn towards the end of the semester is a viable social contract by which we all live. It establishes the laws by which we agree to live to maximize freedom, no lying, stealing, cheating, raping, and robbing. Okay? But the action can produce a desired consequence. It could be a bad action. I use robbery as one of the examples. Lottery gambling is not always extolled by societies, but we decided in ours we're going to use it. What's the other principle that emphasizes the action regardless of the consequence? Deontology. Again, a Greek word, two parts. Ology is always the study of whatever comes before. Deontos is duty. Immanuel Kant says what's important is your duty. It becomes your moral obligation or moral duty to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. And that works for first responders unless consequences are to, notice how consequences aren't supposed to come into play unless the consequences are detrimental. So if you're a fire person running into a building totally consumed in flames, someone on the third floor cannot be rescued, you're not morally obligated to run in. You may choose to. Ladder 49, Joaquin Phoenix, he's a fireman, he runs in, the end of the movie, runs into a warehouse, he's told there's someone in there, there's nobody, and he cannot get out. He's consumed in fire, and that's the end of his life. He could have maybe saved 20 more people. He did what he thought was morally correct, but the consequences were detrimental. So there's an upside to all of these principles. There's a downside. When we get into theory, because we're based on principles that have up and down sides, the theories are going to have up and down sides as well. And we need to be cognizant. We need to be aware of what those differences are, as well as what those shortcomings are. So when we run into one that produces a shortcoming, maybe there's another theory we can apply. So today we're going to talk about hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure and our pursuit of happiness, but we're also going to talk about moral virtue this semester, which is building character. We're going to talk about moral duty. We're going to talk about feminist ethics and ethics of caring. We're going to talk about ethical egoism, how my choices apply to a social situation where other people have different choices, different objectives in life. How do I work through that? Is it always what's in it for me and me only, or do I have to incorporate other ways of thinking like altruism, the golden rule, what's the best way of acting rather than what's necessarily right or wrong? So what we're going to do is theory this week, and we're going to start with hedonism. There are four ethicists. Today I'm going to go over Epicurus and John Stuart Mill. Epicurus is an ancient Greek. His idea of the good life, a life of pleasure and happiness, is a life of moderation. I'll explain that in detail. John Stuart Mill believes simply in physical pleasure and intellectual pleasure. Pleasure is the heart of the good life. And then Thursday we'll go over Robert Nozick, who's going to give us an experience machine and ask us if we want to live in that. And finally, Jean Kazaz is going to identify at least 5 areas of what most of us think are necessary, but not necessarily the only things that are necessary, and how do we go about figuring out what makes for the good life. Questions? That being said, then, let's start with what's called value theory. We're trying to put values into our theories that reflect the good life, the social contract by which we live. Value theory is that part of moral philosophy that focuses on questions about what is intrinsically valuable. word intrinsic means it's built into it. Is there anything out there that produces the good life that's good in and of itself and doesn't need anything else to be added to it? So you may be extremely wealthy. Maybe you're born into wealth. You can have any toy you want. You can do whatever you want to do with your life. You always have the finances to do it. At the end of your life, you're diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and you're going to drown in your own fluid. How happy are you? Was that a good life? Because you were happy 98% of your life and now you drown in your own fluid. Do I have any people who are in medical care? Maybe end-of-life care? Drowning in your own fluid is really ugly. You'll probably cough and break your ribs before you get to death. Same thing happens with bone cancer. We can't touch bone cancer. You're in constant pain. I have a friend right now going through end stages of bone cancer. And it is a gruesome thing to go through, and it's a gruesome thing to be around. We could have great health and be penniless. You get to the end of your life and you wonder if this was really worth living. You've never had an advantage, you've never had anything go your way, everything that looked like it was going to be yours was taken away from you and given to someone else. You feel like you're at the bottom of life the whole entire time of your life. And pleasure as well. Some pleasures are so good that they lead to negative consequences. Back in the day, I heard we still do this, they sell Domino sugar cubes in boxes. We used to sit down and watch TV and eat Domino sugar cubes, and sugar will ruin your life sooner or later. One of the reasons they say I got cancer, and let's get this right, cancer is not a disease. I don't know why they continue to propagate that myth on TV. All of you will get cancer in your lifetime. Sorry about that. And 4 out of 5 of you will not know it because your body's autoimmune system will shut down the cells that are trying to eat you to death. Cancer is simply your cells deciding they're going to eat up all the available energy and the rest of you are going to starve. You literally starve to death. And it's gruesome as well. 20% of us, our autoimmune system is compromised and we have no way to fight back, so we have to turn to other methods. Too much sugar will really hammer your autoimmune system, as well as other things that we put in our diets. But it's pleasurable. I would guess most people are okay with sweets. Taste good, make us feel good, give us a little energy rush, a little bump. But they can be very detrimental to our lives as well. So pleasure, wealth, and health don't necessarily lead to the good life. How do we evaluate the good life? Is it this day, this week? We'll study Aristotle. Aristotle says the only way to evaluate whether you were happy and had the good life is to wait for the end of your life. Like I said, 98% of your life, golden spoon in your mouth, anything you want you can have, and then you die of lung cancer. You ask the person just before they drown in their own bodily fluids, what do you think of your life? Highest incidence of suicide is usually among the richest people. Toys do not make you happy, they just fill up your toy bag. So value theory addresses what kinds of things are intrinsically valuable. Happiness is on almost everybody's list. So we start every time we get together now with a little discussion time. You're encouraged to volunteer discussion, or I will use one of the fingers and I will identify you as a volunteer, which may be an oxymoron. What is happiness? This is groupthink, people. There's no wrong questions. Feelings. What is happiness? Let me put it, what makes you happy?
Things in life.
Say that again.
Things in life. Things in life.
Things.
In life, thank you. Things in life. What kind of things?
Family. Success. Things.
Family, success. Who said love? What is love?
Money. Can be anything.
¿Cuál es amor? Dígame, ¿cuál es amor?
I mean, what is love? Love is one of the gifts of
That's the right answer. I just want to probe it. That's all I'm doing, people. Yeah, no, love is right. What is love?
Emotion.
Emotion? Is that the first level, or is that romance? Was Sheryl Crow right? The first love is the deepest, also cuts right to the quick, right? I'm going to assume most of you had your first loves, and when that goes south, the kids we planned on, all these things we were going to do, goes right out the window. And we have a negative reaction to the love of our lives, you know. I was just listening to Sarah Evans, she's a country singer. I couldn't ask for any more. Heartthrob, you know. And it's there for a reason. It feels good, doesn't it? Until it goes south. And it goes south. Some people still have their first loves. I think that's great. I don't understand it, but I think that's great. What else makes people happy? What makes you happy?
Self-fulfillment.
Self-fulfillment? What would that mean? That's the right answer too. What would that mean?
Achieving, or like, achieving your aspirations.
Achieving your goals, your aspirations in life? Absolutely. Go ahead.
Good food.
Good place to live, good food.
Helping people.
Helping people.
Art.
Art. Sure. Monday?
It can be anything.
It couldn't be anything. So our quest for the good life, but how many of you would like less happiness rather than more? Anybody want less? Is happiness the most important quality of life that will make us evaluate life as a good life? Does happiness ever have a negative component to it? Like giving childbirth?
Yeah.
Hopefully, sooner or later, we genetically figure out how to get men pregnant. They will understand what happiness is. You know, I've been at 6, I've been at 7 of them. And by the way, you gentlemen, because you're not biologically geared to have children, if you happen to show up at a birthing, the corner, a 2-pound bag of M&Ms, and say nothing. Just eat your M&Ms. It works magic for a woman. I happened to be in the room, a doctor came in, a friend of mine was ready to give birth. She wasn't quite dilated and ready, but the doctor came in, they always want to check you, so he got where he's supposed to get the checker, and I don't know what Champ did, but Jane reached up behind her, there was a wet washcloth on the back of the bedpost. She picked that up, I won't hit you, and she just laid a whooping on that man's head. Champ jumped back, he says, "What are you doing?" Whatever you did, if you do that again, I'm going to lay a second whooping on you. So I just sat there in my chair and reached in my bag and started eating more M&Ms. You do not want to interfere with birth. It tears a woman up. But as soon as that little critter pops out of the oven, oh, mamacita, you got your baby finally. And you're happy. How many of you have kids? You're happy. I was here for all my births, and well, I adopted Jody, my daughter, but probably 3 boys and my grand. It's a miracle. You look at that and you go, wow. But it comes at the great expense of pain and tearing down. That's why for 3 months you got to leave the woman alone. Let her recuperate. She's not interested in you. She's interested in the baby. Well, we normally don't think about happiness that way, man. Maybe pain produces happiness. Not during the pain, but maybe pain produces the happiness. Happiness then is this kind of elusive thing. You know, we want to think about it as a good thing, a positive thing, but maybe that's not the only path to happiness. In fact, how many of you know this? You know that adversity shows up at the door and it doesn't need a key to get in, it just walks right in. It says, "Hi, it's your turn." You end up having to deal with it. Adversity, by the way, comes in 2 flavors. It comes as obstacles or opportunities. What's the difference between an obstacle and an opportunity? You are. You can treat adversity as an opportunity, you can treat it as an obstacle. But never ask your permission. It walks right into your life. Sometimes it seems catastrophic, other times it's just pain. This is applied ethics, people. This is life on